So, Daniel Sterman, here's a question for you. It says that if you count all the seats in the Knesset, and if you counted all of those that are right wing, you come up to 72 seats. It's not this 50-50 balance, but it's because of the personality of Netanyahu that it's different. My question is that correct? And I ask it because are the new fault lines in Israel no longer left versus right, but rather these questions of secular versus religious, the way John Lyndon was talking about it a moment ago?
I wouldn't say that secular versus religious is the fault line right now, partially because the new prime minister, Naftali Bennett, is the first religious prime minister in Israel's entire history. The fault lines are basically pro-Netanyahu versus anti-Netanyahu. And if and when he does leave the political scene, all the cards are shuffled. We could see the most random coalitions that are completely unimaginable right now. There's no way of knowing if the Haredi parties, the ultra-Orthodox parties, will suddenly join coalitions with left-wing parties that might convince them that they're not going to attack them as much as they've been attacking them under Netanyahu. You might have a realignment of the entire right and the religious right in the 72-seat majority that you described. There's really no way of telling.
John Lyndon?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, two things very quickly. One, this is an Islamist party in a governing coalition in the Jewish state of Israel. It's an extraordinary, I think it's the first country, non-Muslim majority country in the world that this has happened in. Nobody would have bet that Israel would be that country. And it's important to remember that many sort of anti-Islamist forces around the world had talked about Israel as this kind of bridgehead against political Islam. And now political Islam is ideologically inside a governing coalition. That's important because it shows you not to be fatalistic about what happens in Israeli politics. It's changed so much in the last 2 years. We've had electoral cycles speed up political evolution. And I think it leads to something very, very important in the medium term. For all of the history of the state, it's basically been taboo for Arabs to sit in government, to be making decisions with regards to security, for understandable reasons, for a country that's in conflict with its neighbours. That taboo now being broken changes everything on the electoral map, because 20% of Israelis are Palestinian or Arab citizens. To have 20% of society, of a minority group in particular, kind of disqualified from government for the entire government's history, that means that coalitions always tilt right. Now, suddenly to have that opened up again, and I think to watch Mansour Abbas, who's a very shrewd politician, I think he is going to do everything he can to keep this coalition going, to get goods for his community, to make sure that like development towns get recognised in the Negev, that budgets increase. And then what you may see, and I've got to be careful because you can't be too optimistic as well as being pessimistic about Israeli politics, is more participation by Arab citizens too. Now, why that's very important is in the war that we saw in May, one of the most dangerous dynamics that developed was this intercommunal violence. There's a lot of things going on there, but one of them is essentially
between Arab Israelis and Jews,
and Jews,
which is something you hadn't seen in the previous.
We saw some of it maybe 21 years ago, but not in this kind of house to house kind of intercommunal way, which is very dangerous in a society that's already as divided as Israel is. The best way to fix that, whether you're left wing or right wing in Israel, is to really bind in together a sense of civic cohesion. Jews and Arabs together in joint political projects. I happen to think it's very, very good for Israeli democracy and politics over the long term. I'm not an Israeli voter, I don't get a choice, but it's also very, very good for cohesion and that sense of civil unity and a shared citizenship. Many of our members at the Alliance for Middle East Peace, they work every day on this, creating coalitions between Arab and Jewish citizens. It's all there ready. And one of the things that's been really encouraging is the way that Naftali Bennett, on the right wing, a national religious figure, has talked about this Jewish-Arab cooperation, the way Yair Lapid has done so, and of course the way that Mansour Abbas has. That's something that we can be cautiously quite optimistic about, and it's brand new.
Do you share that cautious optimism, Akiva Spiegelman?
I do, but we need to be very clear about this. An Arab party in the coalition is a risk if we ever have tension with Gaza again. During the last 11 days of war, they didn't say a word. They kept very quiet, whether it was about the riots or the war itself. So we have to keep in mind on that. Also, this isn't a moderate Arab party. As you saw, Mansour Abbas spoke in Arabic, which is actually not allowed on the Knesset floor, but we'll let that slide. We need to see exactly what their ideals are, where they stand, and what exactly they're going to let and not let happen. I can see a lot of issues with building in in the settlements, or if they want to make changes in the Negev, which is big right now, a big discussion about that. It almost threw the coalition under the bus before it even came to life. So we need to be very aware of what they want. They've understood the political map in a very good way, to their credit, and now we need to follow up and see what exactly they have in mind for the future.